back again like I never left. UFC Fight Night, Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady takes place this Saturday, where dreams and hopes and ambitions go to die at the UFC Apex. For anybody who has been following the channel, thank you. Thank you. I'm working really hard to try to grow this. I'm the most dedicated picks channel on YouTube. You got a lot of other guys out there that are making fun and whimsical content, and sure, they are making picks videos, but they're not tracking their results. They're not being transparent. They're not really out here to be the best picks channel on YouTube, okay? They want to make their picks, and they want to brag about the good ones, and they want to sweep the shitty ones under the rug. We're not about that here at Question Mark Picks. For anybody who's new to the channel, welcome. I cover every single UFC card, even the dog shit Apex cards. I'm not just cherry picking the pay-per-views, and I'm not just cherry picking the easy fights to predict. Okay, some of these people want to only pick the main events. I'm picking every single fight on every single card, and I'm giving my detailed breakdown and analysis of what's going to take place, and ultimately who's going to walk away with the dubski. So without further ado, let's get into it. Zygimantas Ramaska versus Nathan Fletcher. Look, I already talked about this in my last video. Zygimantas Ramaska and Nathan Fletcher were both on the most recent season of Tough, and Zygimantas, he looked good in his fight. It was a very exciting fight. He might have been fighting a Starbucks barista. I'm just kidding. The guy is a good fighter. I think that at times he almost abandoned his defense just to try to really wow the promotion, and he paid for it and sustained some damage, which ultimately had him forfeit out of the Tough tournament. But he didn't actually lose. And in that performance, he looked like a competent striker, and that he is able to scramble, and he's a competent striker and grappler. And Nathan Fletcher, absolutely nothing about his performance impressed me whatsoever. He does train with Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann, but I think the biggest thing I'm having a hard time getting past is that Nathan Fletcher was a bantamweight who came up to featherweight, and Zygimantas has fought at lightweight and is coming down to featherweight. Sometimes we see a skill gap situation where somebody like Jordan Vucenic is stepping up, and he did lose, but he had a great performance against Guram. But I think that we've seen what Nathan Fletcher can do against a similar caliber of opponent, and I just trust Zygimantas more. So I'm going to be going with him here. Again, for anyone who's new, I make a pick, but I'm only tracking the result. I'll give a lean on the method. I think Zygimantas is probably going to finish Nathan Fletcher by KO in the second or third round. Moving forward, we have André Petroski versus Dylan Budka. André Petroski has had a little bit of a weird run because we see him get finished by Brian Battle on Tough, which isn't a terrible look because Brian Battle is going on to look to be somebody who could, try to break into the rankings here. But then he gets into the UFC, he has some wins. He's pretty much really shown us that his striking is mediocre, and at best, he relies on very dominant control time, good utilization of his takedowns, and he seems to be very heavy on top. Sean Brady-esque top game. Maybe without as much of the submission finishing upside, but you get what I'm saying. He's had a tough go getting chinned by Michel Pereira and then getting slept. I'm forgetting the guy's name at the moment. He got slept by Jacob Malkoon's hip. But I think that he's probably moved past that, right? He had a dominant victory getting back into form against Josh Frem, where, he did what I said. He utilized his grappling, and he just racked up so much control time that the judges really have to give it to him. And Dylan Budka was sold to us as a very high-level grappler, and he attempted to strike with Cesar Almeida and got slept. So I'm going to put him in the camp of grappler with no IQ who isn't aware that when you're fighting a Glory kickboxer, you should try to exploit their takedown defense or lack thereof. And I just have to go with André Petroski here because maybe the grappling will nullify it and we'll see a weird, very low-level stand-up battle. But I just think that André Petroski is a big, strong guy who's probably going to be able to edge this one out. So André Petroski by unanimous decision. Moving on, we have Jaqueline Amorim versus Vanessa Demopoulos. Okay, guys, so I made a reference at the beginning of the card, or at the beginning of the video, that I'm done doing the beakers and test tubes. I'm done analyzing the fighter's strengths and weaknesses. Vanessa Demopoulos is hot, and I don't really get it, but whatever she is doing will almost always get her a split decision win. I mean, like, let's look at her. I can't remember the last time she, again, hot, but I can't remember the last time she got a W where there isn't an asterisk on it. Like, she lost to Emily Cody, in my opinion. She lost to Kanako Murata. She got a unanimous decision, and she clearly lost. I'm sorry, but, like, you're not Bas Rutten. Those elbows on the bottom weren't doing shit. And it's like control time suddenly doesn't matter when the girl on top is not hot and is Japanese. She did lose to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And it's like all these fights, it's bringing back memories of her losing and then just getting the decision and then just like jumping into Joe Rogan's arms and like just sexualizing herself. Jaqueline Amorim, like, she's a young, talented prospect who, like, she did lose to Sam Page, which is really just strengthening my argument here. But she's like coming off 2 finishes, like on paper, right? Anthony Smith, on paper, she should win this. But in reality, Vanessa Demopoulos, I'm not even going to break down the stats or anything. Like, I'm just going to say Vanessa Demopoulos is going to win a controversial decision because that's just the way she goes. That's just the way she goes. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Moving on, we have Gabriel Santos versus Yizha. Now, we've seen this before, right? An Asian fighter coming into the UFC with as many fights as you see a fighter have when they retire by the time that they're in their like mid to late 20s, which really just doesn't make any goddamn sense whatsoever. It's because there's a bunch of cans in the regional scene, and like it's like Thailand, like they're fighting like every other week because the fighters who come out of this who are pretty good are like sleeping these cans. And then Gabriel Santos. So Gabriel Santos had one of those debuts versus Lerone Murphy where it's like you lost, but you looked pretty damn good in the process, right? And what does the promotion do? When you give them Lerone Murphy, who just schooled Edson Barboza in his debut, and he makes a very competitive fight. Yeah, let's feed him to David Onama, right? That makes sense. They're not giving this guy any breaks. And David Onama knocks him out with an uppercut. So, like, you have a guy who's 0-2 in the UFC, but I see a lot of talent there, and I'm going to pick him to finish Yizha. Kind of cool that he's only got one name. But I'm going to go with him to finish Yizha because, again, I've just seen this trend too many times. Until I see a guy like Yizha come into the UFC and show that he's UFC level, I'm just going to assume that even though the record looks really nice and that I'm baffled with how many fights he has, that a lot of those guys were not UFC caliber guys. So I'm going to go Gabriel Santos to win by just finish. I'm not going to lean knockout or submission. I'm going to go with him to finish Yizha. Okay, moving on. We have André Lima versus Felipe dos Santos. An all Brazil fight. a sort of confusing matchmaking by the UFC, because both of these guys show promise, and I'm just not quite sure why they need to be fighting each other at this stage. He had that split against Mitch Raposo, and Mitch Raposo is not amazing by any means, but like he's at least, you know, outside of the rankings UFC level. And Felipe dos Santos, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. So he's the guy who had the really good fight against Manel Kape, and then beats Altamirano by. So both of these guys coming off split decisions. Similar to the last fight, you know, you had a guy who had a debut where he lost, but showed a lot of promise. And I just think that, like, if you're having a very solid matchup with, and also let me just see what weight class is this fight? Okay, so this is taking place at flyweight. Okay. So when Andre Lima fought Mitch Raposo, oh yeah, right, because it was at a catch weight, because he missed weight. That's right. Okay. I'm gonna go with Felipe dos Santos here. I am. I really liked what I saw out of him in his debut versus Kape, and I think that, like, when you see a guy coming off of a split decision win, and he had that big advantage because he missed weight, and like it might, like, maybe like he's doing too much to get down to flyweight. This is a tricky one. These are just two similar fighters in the height and build and their style. But I'm gonna go with the shoot-a-box guy who we've seen have a competitive fight against Manel Kape to win a decision. So moving forward to the next bout, we have Isaac Dulgarian versus Brendon Marotte, or Marotte. I don't know how to say this guy's name. Yeah, so minus 2,500. It's clear that the UFC matchmakers realize that Dulgarian got absolutely robbed by Christian Rodriguez. And, you know, Christian Rodriguez, I'm really glad that Juicy J gave him that kind of ball don't lie. Like, Christian Rodriguez should have beat Juicy J, but I think that Juicy J and the MMA gods corrected this loss on Dulgarian's on his record that Rodriguez should have had. Look, he beat Christian Rodriguez, okay? I mean, this was up there with one of the worst decisions that I've seen in recent memory. Shades of Jacoby versus Roundtree, not necessarily in the way that it went down, but it's like Dulgarian had a lot of control time, man. Christian Rodriguez is a competent fighter, and, you know, Dulgarian, he looked really solid, and he just fucked up Francis Fire Marshall, who won in his last fight, so that makes that win age a little bit better. And yeah, it's just like, come on, he's minus 2,500 for a reason. The matchmakers are trying to give him a layup because they feel bad that he was robbed a victory that he should have gotten. He should still be undefeated. They're feeding him a can, and then the next match, they're probably going to matchmake him the type of fight he should have gotten for beating Christian Rodriguez. So that's my take on this fight. Again, these minus 2,500 for a reason. Hot take: Isaac Dulgarian is gonna win this fight. You know what I mean? What are we fucking doing here? Moving on to the next fight on the card, we have Rongzhu versus Chris Padilla. Now, oh man, this is tricky for me. This is tricky because, whoa, I didn't mean to click on that. I was trying to go to Rongzhu. This is tricky because these road to the UFC guys, man. It's like what I'm saying, what I've said before. Like, I can't. And the thing is that he had some UFC fights, right? He loses to Rodrigo Vargas. He beats Brendon Jenkins. He loses to Ignacio Bonamondes. Off you go back to the regional scene. And, you know, he's winning the road. So he's had some UFC exposure. Typical story that you see with an Asian guy, fucking 24 with 30 fights. Literally makes no sense. And then you have Chris Padilla, Taco. Yeah, he absolutely destroyed James Lontop. I understand that his record looks very questionable when you go back and you look at some of these losses that he's had on the regional scene. Some of them are fighters that we recognize, though, right? Like he fought Gabe Green. Gosh, he loses to 20-12 Darren Smith, 6-4 Devin Brock. See, the thing is like, if he didn't have the James Lontop victory, and I saw this, like, it'd be like an easy Rongzhu pick. But sometimes these guys, like, they're taking fights in terrible circumstances because they're just trying to, and like, dude, this guy is from, he's an American, but sometimes these guys, like, they take fights in terrible circumstances and you don't really know why. And then finally, when they get things in order, you see their true potential. I'm just having a hard time just like easily, like we just saw James Lontop again. Was he basically, you know, a punching bag? Like, dude, it was a split. Like he had a good contest with Vyacheslav Borshev. And obviously Slava Claus is not the guy that's going to test someone's grappling. But I mean, to get a submission over him in the first round when he, you know, Lontop's actually, like, Lontop impressed me. I made a reference in my last video that he's not Goku, he's Yamcha on his best day. I think bro is more like TN maybe. He looked actually pretty good. So, like, I just can't say confidently that Rongzhu is... I'm going to go with an underdog pick here. I'm going to go with Chris Padilla. Because, yeah, it's just like, even though you see these guys from the road to UFC having like a much cleaner looking record, it's just like, of those fights, how good were these guys? Yeah, I'm gonna go with a flyer here. I'm gonna go with Chris Padilla to win by submission, because I think that he's a very competent grappling game. Okay, so let me get back to just the overall Tapology page. And moving on to the next fight. All right, this is where the card starts to get interesting. As far as like Apex fights go, for like these last, you know, 5 cards, I'm like actually pretty impressed. Trevor Peak versus Yanal Ashmouz. Oh my God, 66% going with Peak. Guys, Trevor Peak is fun. He's very fun. He's very tough, right? But like, can we be real with ourselves here? Can we be real with ourselves? Like, did we fall in love with the hammer fist? Like, he's throwing standing hammer fist punches. Was that fun to watch versus Eric Gonzalez? And like, is he a fun story? It's like this Southern guy who used to be a drug addict, and you know, he's found Jesus, and MMA has helped him turn his life around. Like, he's got a beautiful story. I think that he's a very endearing fighter. But like, you've gotten the Chepe Mariscal. It's like, dude, you got destroyed by Charlie Campbell. And I know that Charlie Campbell is a good fighter who's on a nice little run, but like, man, Charlie Campbell just fucking schooled you. It was an absolute schooling. And Yanal, I think people just see the name Yanal and I don't know, they're just like, I don't like this guy, so like I'm going with Trevor Peak. I'm like, do you guys not remember when he just absolutely flatlined Sam Patterson? And I know that he lost to Chris Duncan, but it's like, it was a somewhat competitive fight, and Chris Duncan seems to be pretty solid. I mean, he lost to Manuel. I mean, you start to play this game where it's like, you start to look at the guys who are at the top. It's like, yeah, he lost to Manuel Torres. But I I feel very confident in this Yanal Ashmouz pick. I really do. I think that Trevor Peek is one of these guys who relies on his toughness and his former drug addict like pain resistance to out tough you. I don't rate him as a good grappler, and his striking's not clean. Like Yanal is just a better MMA fighter, and I don't think that Yanal is some guy who's just going to crumble and break. I think that he's just going to show that he is a better technical MMA fighter. And this might sound contrarian to what I was saying before with the beakers and test tube stuff, but like, guys, Trevor Peek is not going to like standing hammer fist his way to a victory here. I think that Trevor Peek has a very low ceiling in the UFC. I'm just being real. Fun guy. Could stay in the UFC for a while because he's a very entertaining fighter, but that's really all the guy's got going for him, man. I know that it's not the sexiest pick, but I'm going to go Yanal Ashmouz to win by decision, but I bet you he drops Trevor Peek like on more than a few. Like, I bet you he drops him multiple times. And we're like, wow, Trevor Peek, like the commentary is glazing Peek for his toughness. Meanwhile, he's just blocking punches with his face. Moving on, we have Matt Schnell versus Cody Durden. Dude, like Matt Schnell has taken his nickname is Danger, but like, this is not like Walter White, like I am the danger. This is like the reverse Walter White. Bro is in danger. Like, I've seen him take, and like, dude, he fights at flyweight, and he takes so much damage. Even in, if you're looking at his 5-fight run, even the fight where he beats Sumaderchi, like he was on death's door before he pulled out that victory. I don't see any way that that he's gonna be able to get this done against Cody Durden. I'm just being real. I know that Cody Durden's had a tough go with Tigir and Bruno Silva, but yeah, he was looking good against Bruno Silva until he got chinned, and Tigir is a very good fighter. I don't know how I'm going to go with Matt Schnell here. I really don't. I just feel like Schnell, like, you win a split decision against Tyson Nam. Other than that, you went on a nice little streak from 2017 to 2019. But like, since then, it's been split decision win versus Tyson Nam. I know that a lot of the guys that he's losing to are pretty high level, but I just think that Cody Durden is a smart fighter who is very adept in the grappling, and I think that he's going to be able to get a win here. Man, I'm going to be real salty here if Matt Schnell pulls out a victory, but I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening, especially coming off of 2 losses. I think Cody Durden is going to be very serious in this matchup, and I think that he's going to get the dub. Moving on, we have Steve Garcia versus Kyle Nelson. You guys know how I feel about Steve Garcia, guys. All my homies love Steve Garcia. Look, Kyle Nelson has been on a pretty sick run, I'm not gonna lie. But like, is Blake Builder really legit? Not really. I mean, he's sleeping homeless guys in his gym on Instagram, but other than that, I'm not really seeing anything too impressive. And like the Algeo, that was a little bit of an early stoppage. And the Mean Machine, look guys, we might be talking about a Mean Machine title run here. Seriously, like, Steve Garcia appears to be in legendary form. He's a fucking huge featherweight. He's a 6 foot tall featherweight, fighting out of Jackson Wink. And like, he had that loss to Mahashata, but that was 2 years ago. Boy, since then, he sleeps Chase Hooper. He sleeps Shilan Erdenbeck. He sleeps Mezcal Costa, which is impressive. And then he sleeps Sungwoo Choi, and I believe that he's going to sleep Kyle Nelson. I think that Kyle Nelson has had a fun run. But I think that it's coming to an end here. I really do. I think that Steve Garcia is riding this momentum, and dude, he just looks like he's in again, like a new mythical fighter has appeared. And it's not like anything had to change as far as his appearance. It's just he leveled up and he's knocking everybody dead, and he's fighting out of a good camp. And I've just loved what I've seen from him. I can't go against him. I'm going with Steve Garcia by KO. Okay, this is a tricky one. Jéssica Andrade versus Natalia Silva. This is a really tricky one because Natalia Silva has looked fantastic in her UFC run so far. The Jazz Divisius win is impressive because I rate her high. And then she knocks out Teresa Bleda, who is a touted prospect, with a spinning back kick, and then sleeps Victoria Leonardo, but who isn't? And then handily defeats Andrea Lee, and then handily defeats Viviane Araújo. And we're looking at, it seems like Andrade, well, it seemed like she was out of the sort of like, let me just bounce between straw and flyweight. No, not. Yeah, bouncing between straw and flyweight. But like here we are. She's fighting at flyweight. So I don't like when I see that. I feel like she's probably locked into a pretty solid contract, and she's trying to just get that money. You know what I'm saying? I can't imagine a manager would have her take this fight. Like realistically, there's a situation after beating, after knocking out Mackenzie Dern and after beating Marina Rodriguez, like there's a conversation that she's one fight away from a title fight at strawweight. And she's only 32, and for some reason she's taking a fight against a streaking, very talented flyweight. I don't like this. It's not a good look for her. I think that I'm gonna go with Natalia Silva to get a decision here, because like we have seen her finish. I mean, again, I'm pretty sure my cat would finish Victoria Lee. I'm pretty sure my 5-year-old little sister would finish Victoria Leonardo. Pretty sure a strong gust of wind would finish Victoria Leonardo. And other than that spinning back kick, Bleda level changed for a takedown and then ate like a spinning body kick right to the nose. Yeah, Natalia Silva will win this fight by decision. I'm quite confident. I think Andrade is kind of like in an Andrei Arlovsky, Donald Cerrone sort of contract where she's just like, let me take as many fights as I can possibly get. I don't even fucking care about being the champion anymore, because I can just make a bunch of money through activity. That's what I'm getting out of this. Because like, why would you take this fight? It just doesn't make sense. So, okay, moving on to a exciting main event. We have Gilbert Durino Burns versus Sean Brady. This is really tough here because they're very similar fighters, except like they're very similar fighters with their grappling acumen and their like highly touted, specifically MMA grappling. Brady seems to have freakishly strong top control, but we don't see like anybody try to test Gilbert Burns in the grappling. Like we saw Hamzat try to test it and it didn't work. And like in these like he was on his way to maybe winning a questionable decision again. I mean, we know the scorecards where they were. I still think that like if JDM wouldn't have slept him, I would have been salty if they gave this decision to Burns. But like, dude, that's JDM we're talking about here. I think JDM would sleep Sean Brady. I'm for real. And I know that he's 38, but he's taken an adequate amount of time off, and it's just like, I'm not that impressed with the Kimura decision win against Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum just fluked a win in his last fight. Who was that against again? He fluked a win against Daniel Rodriguez because he missed weight and, like, in a very douchey way, used his extra size to be able to, he didn't even win that fight convincingly. And everybody's back on the Brady hype train because, you know, oh, Gastelum is this high-level wrestler, and it's so impressive that he beat him by Kimura. We've seen Sean Brady get dropped by Jake Matthews, and look, he can't win a fight unless he's able to dominate you in the grappling. And even at 38, like, am I expected to believe that he's going to dominate Gilbert Burns in the grappling? Am I expected to believe that all of a sudden Sean Brady is going to be a sniper on the feet and he's going to be outpointing Gilbert Burns at range? Burns has way better finishing upside. I'm going with Gilbert Burns as the underdog to win. By finish, it's a 5-round fight. I think a finish is going to be there. So, yeah, guys, I'm running out of time here. So I hope you like the content. If you do, like and subscribe, and I'll be looking forward to covering that Sphere card. Deuces.